Hi, I'm Parker, General Manager here at Real Fly Rod, and today we're chatting it up with Greg. Greg Morrett of Morrett Fly Fishing. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my
And
pleasure.
now, I'm assuming the reason you've asked me to talk about Winston is because of my age and how long I've been using Winston.
I think it's through and through in your blood.
Yeah, probably so. and maybe my wallet.
Well, you brought in an incredible piece of hardware over here.
That's where I started with Winston, I guess 25 years ago. The boys that owned the shop, good friends of mine, that the local fly shop at that time said, okay, you need to step up to Winston. And I was wanting to get bamboo, and they said you need to start with a Winston bamboo. And that led actually to every graphite rod I've bought since then or used since then, I think is somewhere during the day I'm using Winston.
Well, we just gave you Winston Pure a while back.
Absolutely. What a nice surprise.
Absolutely. And the reason I brought you in today is we're going to talk about the IFTD winner of Best Freshwater Rod, the Winston Air 2.
And you were nice enough to let me borrow it for a couple days.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've got some comments about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, let's dive a little bit deeper into this thing.
Okay.
So, like I said, winner of the 2022 IFTD award. I think it's good for Winston. They build extremely great rods. The Air 2 is a couple iterations of the Boron series rods. And, once we kind of get deeper into this, but what was your overall thought?
Well, you mentioned, and I've been, as we've mentioned, I've been a Winston fan for a long time, and that is, I think, the only rods that I've purchased have been Winstons. Others might have been handed to me, but Winstons have where I've spent my dollars on fly rods. One thing, I'm still using Winston rods I bought 25 years ago, which is great. But quite honestly, over the last 10 years, I guess, I've looked at the new Winston rods from the Boron 1, the 2, the 3, whatever it might be.
Yep.
And I think what I found about them is I didn't like the feel as much as my older Winstons.
Sure.
Quite honestly.
I can see that. The old W2s, I got one of those.
WT,
Yeah.
the DLs, the GSX,
Yeah.
the Tom Morgan favorite.
Yep.
They had that Winston feel that
All
people
throughout
talked
the rod,
about.
too, yeah. Yep.
And I personally felt like the rods that we mentioned in that Boron series, they lost some of that Winston feel to me. And Winston feel to me spoke of being able to feel it down in the hands, down in the butt section of the rod. Even when you're loading a lightweight rod and throwing just little size 18 reels, you would, or 18 flies, you would feel it in the hand.
Sure.
And I didn't get that out of the last 5 years of rods until you guys handed me the Winston Pure.
Yeah. Well, the Pure was a nice fit for you. And, as a seller of Winston rods for so many years, we used to actually get little parking blocks. And basically, we would set one out at 20 or 30 feet for an in-store customer and then set the next one out at 60 or 7 feet, hand them a green stick and say, how does it feel at 20, 30? How does it feel at 67? The customer usually said, it can perform every single cast, accurately and nice tight loops. So with the new Winston Air 2, I'm excited because I've actually had a little bit different experience. I've started more with the Boron 2 series, went up to the Boron 3X, got the Winston Air. Now I got the Winston Air 2, and I think one of the most notable things that I found is that it's incredibly light. Right in the hand, a 5-weight, 9-foot, feels like a 3-weight, on normal rods.
Lightweight for me, up until casting this Air 2, lightweight for me translated in, it didn't feel as good to me. Okay? I mean, I compare my old WT in a 5-weight to a Boron in a 5-weight, and I could feel the WT.
Sure.
And weight wasn't a big issue, all right? But my understanding is with the technology now with the Boron 3 and the improved graphite that they've put in this particular model of rod, what I instantly felt when I cast it is that feels more like the traditional Winston feel to me.
And I think they're allowing that boron technology with each iteration from the the boron 2 all the way up is, I think it's allowing the rod to get lighter, but it's also transferring the energy much better than maybe rods that you fished previously.
Right.
So
And specific to the Air 2, they talk about how they changed the boron 3 in the butt section
correct.
of this, which allows that transfer of energy to come from down here throughout the rod. You like to talk of energy from the tip down.
Correct.
You're kind of the new age, and you said your traditional Winston rods might have been in the boron series,
That's
whereas
correct,
my
yep.
traditional rods date back further.
Yep.
So what is traditional is different depending on
That is
whether
true.
you're the father or the son, right? I mean, that's the reality. And I think that this is the first time I've cast a Winston rod that I really felt like I could comfortably present as small a dry fly presentation very softly, which is what I love to
Yep.
do. But in the same breath, I could cut that tippet off and tie a streamer on there and present this streamer with the same rod. And that's rare.
And I would even say, coming from the standpoint, we're on the eastern Midwestern side of the states, and Winston is built out west.
Sure.
It's kind of designed for that 40, 50, 60-foot cast, and with that boron, what I find is that it stiffens up and allows that power to really come loose around 50 feet or more. But for us eastern guys, that nice Winston tip feel, because of the progression of this taper, you can have that 20-foot cast on this 5-weight 9-foot on a smaller stream.
Yeah, and as I said, what stands out to me is I would call this an all-around fly rod for this area, especially to me.
Yep.
Because it combines that lighter or shorter casting kind of stroke where you're throwing it 30, 40 feet. Because you know as well as I, when we're fishing over here, if it's further than 30, 40 foot away, why don't you just wade a little closer?
Exactly.
Is the way we look
Yep.
at it.
We got smaller
right?
streams for sure.
Right,
Yep.
to where you now can let it out a little bit also
Yep.
with this rod, which, as I get a little older, the wading isn't as good. I could use a little longer cast sometimes. And I did. I was impressed. I've always been impressed with the Winston details that they use. That separates it from other rods out there. The green, of course, is Winston green,
Yep.
and that means something to me because you know what all went into it.
Well, and one of the nice things, again, my first thought is extremely light. The second thought is, like you said, the craftsmanship of this rod, from the nickel, silver reel seats to this burled wood, which they're calling elder, up to probably one of the best, corks you can probably get in Portugal, I imagine.
Sure.
All the way up the blank, you can get. They're talking about their new Eco Slick coating guides, which basically they're suggesting that it's going to be more accurate. It's going to allow you a little bit better distance. Basically, the fly line's going to have less friction coming through the guides. And sometimes with the price tag of these fly rods, you kind of wonder, well, what's all included, and really it's the craftsmanship of the rod that's a huge chunk of that money.
Well, what's included in it is Winston has always been very specific about their tapers, as far as trying to maintain that sweet Winston feel that I don't know anyone can really describe
Correct.
to you. But with this rod, the Pure is a perfect dry fly rod. Absolutely. It's not an all-around rod.
Yep.
And when you guys put that in my hands, you knew you were putting it in the hands of a guy who 90% of the time is going to be throwing dry flies.
Yeah.
So it's perfect. And I have other rods if I want to throw streamers. This really, it's cool in that you can get a Winston rod that is all-purpose for any kind of trout fishing that you want to do. Because you can certainly switch right to a long leader and a small fly and cut it down to 6.5, 7 feet and put a streamer on it.
Oh yeah.
Which, you talk about expense. I mean, it's $1,000 rod,
$1,095.
$1,100 rod. You're getting an all-purpose rod here.
Yep. Lifetime warranty too. You can break this thing a couple times a day.
Oh, and I've done that.
Yep.
And I can attest to the fact that Winston will take care, even if you run over it from stem to stern, which one of us has done. But the reality is, all of the details and everything translate into what kind of fishing experience you want to have.
Correct.
And when you're holding a Winston, the performance is there. but there's something more to it. Is it esoterical? Maybe so. Is it a soul?
Yep.
Some would want to call it that, but I feel different when I'm casting a Winston rod than when I cast any other rod.
And I think they got it, right on the dot at the IFTD show. I mean, best freshwater rod. I mean, this thing can handle west, east coast, streamer fishing, like you were saying. Some of the stripping guides also have some ceramics, so it allows those textured lines can kind of go in and not wear out.
Not wear out.
We were talking about how they still do their ferrule systems, allowing for a little bit.
A little bit of wear.
Yeah, this thing's supposed to be handed down to sons, daughters, generations, and I think they hit the ball out of the park on this one.
And I think the big thing is every Winston that's been introduced has been a great fly rod, and it's always been great for maybe this particular kind of fishing, that particular kind of fishing, which is great. And I have those. And yes, if I'm planning on streamer fishing, I don't take a Winston Pure to do it. I might take my Winston WT to do it.
Yep.
But this time of year especially, going to the river with one rod that will allow you to cast just about anything you might have to cast that day.
Yep.
With the quality and the performance in a Winston, this really is a value at $1,100.
Well, and I even think, the way people fish is different than, when I was a kid and you were a kid, we would go dry fly fishing.
Oh, sure.
Now, you may hit a certain section of water and throw in the streamer line, right?
That's right.
Maybe all of a sudden later on in the day you get a hatch going, you get the dry and,
or you're carrying two rods with you and setting the one on the bank when you're fishing this one, and then you go get that one. I'm sold on this simply because it allows me to have the Winston technology in one fly rod that will perform under all kinds of conditions. I like I said, a value is a relative term.
Sure.
But $1,100 for a rod is an expense. It is.
Well, considering what we have in front of us,
I'd be willing to do that. But every rod that I have has a particular, if I'm going to this spot, I'm taking this rod. If I go this place, and as you said, this time of the year especially, you're encountering all kinds of different bugs or streamers or whatever during the day. You could take this out west. You can fish it here. You can fish it East Coast. You can take it up into the mountains and fish small little pocket streams and turn over 20-foot of line, just delicate as can be, and then head down to a big river that afternoon and plop a streamer on it too.
And I would even say that with this particular rod, most of your let's call them universal taper trout lines are going to be best paired, from Rio, Scientific Angler, Airflow, Orvis of what we carry. But with if you want to overload it, maybe some streamer for the smallmouth guys. I'm a smallmouth fisherman that I fish some green sticks, and typically, I'll keep it weighted the same weight as the rod. So,
Okay.
In this case, it's a 5-weight 9-foot. If I need a little power taper or something like that to turn over a little bit heavier bugger, I'm going to keep it weighted to the actual rod.
And just get the line specific to
correct.
that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I would say for presentation, certainly there's some lines you can better attest to what you really like on this.
I've cast like 4 different lines on this particular rod. Some today, some with yours, and I fall into the Rio Tech Trout.
Yep, that's a good one.
It performed in my hands, and everybody's different,
Yep.
I just think there's all kinds of different things you can do in casting and mending line with this rod, line control on the water.
Well, they even got even more specific, and they're about to release some 10-footers in this series. So it's going to allow for guys that, and again, the evolution of fly fishing, a lot of guys nymph nowadays. And so, I think with the feel that we both agree on, the feel is extremely awesome in this rod that, these 10-foot rods for the nymphing guys or the Euro guys, this is going to be a good stick as well for that specific type of application.
Tight line nymphing, reach out. Yeah. I've settled in on a 9-foot just for local waters. But 10-foot is something that my buddies, they talk about and say 10-foot's better. It's funny how things come back around. But I think the thing that always scared me about a longer rod was the weight of it.
Yep.
It always was. But with the new resins, they got I don't know the technical name, but they have
They
new
call
resins.
them a HSR, high
New
specific resin.
new resins that are lighter, stronger. They can use certainly thinner walls of graphite now because of the boron 3 that's in there, and it's durable.
Yep.
And it's technology, but I think they've recaptured over the last, as I said, 5-10 years. I think they've recaptured the Winston spirit that has always been there,
yeah.
and I think it's more so than ever in this Air 2. This is a lot of years of technology, not just technology, but fisherman input. What feels good?
Sure.
They pay attention. They all fish.
They got some really good anglers on their pro staff.
Absolutely,
Yep.
and they've always listened, and they've always been real good about customization.
Yep.
As far as making things the way they want them.
And I always get my name on it. I don't know about you, but I think when we got your rod, didn't we put your name on it?
Yeah, and that was a shock to me because, I'd never had a rod with my name on it. Well, I guess Glenn built one with my name on it in years gone by. Yeah, I do. All of the details that people hear about and it all translates into how does it fish.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing I can look at. And we go out and lawn cast it, and it feels great lawn casting. How does it fish on the water?
Exactly.
How does it pick up line off the water? How does it move line when you're trying to do the different casts that actually are applicable to when you're fishing?
Yep.
And that's why the Winston has always performed at any kind of, and it's made up for sometimes a weaker casting stroke. It really does. Mm-hmm. It definitely helps you perform.
Sometimes it'll cast itself, right?
It brings out the best in you. It brings out the best in you, and I'm tickled to death that when someone walks in the shop now and says, "I want an all-around rod," it's been very difficult to say, what is that?
Sure.
I think I'd, with great confidence, walk over to the Air 2 and say, this is going to apply for a whole lot of fishing.
This is why I brought you in, man. I know you're Winston through and through, just like myself. So they're in stock. Again, winner of the IFTD, so I'm super stoked for them. Congratulations to Winston. But if you guys have any questions, contact our pro staff. Yeah. Greg, I appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
That's all. Thanks for asking. I'd like to think the last 25 years haven't been wasted time.
Absolutely. Cool.
Thanks, Parker.